Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining this. I'm looking to see if there is already any response on the polls. So not yet. Um, we want to briefly present some challenges we faced in our anti-doping data management, how we solve them with IT systems, and to give some recommendations from our own experience. So we were discussing here earlier. We'll try to share some thoughts that we would have liked to hear a few years ago when we started on this journey, and we expect that in the audience we have anti-doping organizations who already have some systems in place. We expect that some of you are building probably systems or licensing systems built by other organizations, but we also expect that everybody is using Adams and benefiting already from the features that we have in Adams. So I mentioned challenges, and I'll ask my colleague Raphael to say which are the most relevant challenges based on his experience in anti-doping.
Thank you, George. So, of course, data treatment has been one of the biggest challenges. And here on the left, you can have a glance at some of those. But let me come back on that a bit later in the presentation. We talked about it in Lausanne at the symposium as well. What I'd like to focus on today is on the right side of this slide. So at the start of my experience with AIU, I quickly realized everyone, internally or externally, was working in his corner, on his own files, even on his own desktop drive, actually. The only way to exchange info or thoughts would be in meetings or by emails. So the duplication of files was huge, and opening the door to human mistakes, typos, gaps between files and people. It would prevent us from being coordinated and efficient, as described here. And when the staff had to be renewed, it would be a nightmare. Handovers were very difficult. Most of the data would be lost in the transition. So when we started to think about an IT solution, it was very clear that the priority was to find a way to improve that aspect, to connect people together and to keep the information available for everybody. So I think, George, maybe this reminds you of something.
Absolutely, sounds familiar. And I would also highlight this, let's say, killing combination of big volumes of data and the need to have real-time information being circulated among the organization, but also with partners or from partners. And yeah, we I think just like you, we struggled with having sometimes different sources of information, and we expect this is a pain for everybody, having to align the different sets of data in order to use it for your decision-making process. Okay, so yeah, these are probably common challenges in the anti-doping world, but let's see, Raphael, what did you do about that?
So you will agree that this slide is quite visual. The data is all around us, and there are many different sources of data that are relevant to anti-doping. So to be efficient, you can see this sport test coordinator here. Well, he's supposed to look at all of it, and it's a real challenge, actually. So how do you look at all this and end up with something useful? So we had to go through an audit of the data available first to create automated processes and data flows so we could tackle the issues that we've seen in the previous slide. The data would be checked, it would be formatted, structured, and organized so it would flow directly in the hand of the users every day. Here, I mean, I don't need to go through all the type of data that we have here, but we can probably address this in the questions later. On your side, George, can you show us how the data flows?
Yeah, so having in mind what we said earlier, the need to have the data available at the right time to the right people, we had to build. Is not a must to have one system, but you need to have a consistent set of tools. And to make sure you have one process connecting all the functions in your organization. And here, if you look on this chart, you see different modules of our system, uh, from the risk assessment and test planning to result management and follow-ups of the programs, including audits and everything else. The key message here is consistency between the software tools. Another one would be interconnectivity, because you might have a financial system that is already in place somewhere and you want to connect your system with that. You might have a document management, you might have some other systems, and you also have partners. And connecting your system with the systems of your partners, making the systems talk to each other and exchange data automatically is also crucial. Now, we think each organization might have particular needs. That's clear. But many of the points are similar, and this is where probably sharing our experience can help all of us learn from each other. Right, Raphael? What do you think?
Yeah, it does look familiar to me, George. Actually, going through those steps on our side, it allowed us to revise our internal procedures, to spot our weaknesses and structure our work. So in the end, we would gain in efficiency. So the whole process is important.
Yeah. So we talked about Adams, and we talked about specific tools and how we approached it, and this is common for ITA and AIU. That's why it was somehow easy for us to prepare this presentation together. We noticed we had the same experience. What is common is that we started from using Adams, and Adams stayed an important part of our tool set. And you see here on the screen with green, I mean, take it as of a generic idea of the main modules in Adams and outside of Adams. So in green, we have the core, which is Adams modules, Adams functions that our teams are using on a daily basis, sometimes during the night as well. And then in blue is represented our custom and specific set of tools. So we end up with a connected ecosystem built around and connected to Adams. And I want to highlight a thing here. In anti-doping, we have Adams in the middle, which is a global data clearinghouse. We all can rely on it, and this is not the case in all industries, in all fields. Some others are struggling to interconnect. So the message is, let's benefit from it to the max, use Adams as much as we can, consider it the source of truth when we validate the information, and then based on our specific needs, more or less general to all of us, we can adapt the rest of the tools to cover the rest of the process. So Raphael, some other thoughts here?
Yeah, I think when we started to set up this, our initial thought was that we should not repeat what Adams is already doing. Some things are already there and work very well, so we would not waste resources and reinvent the wheel. We sticked to this principle, and we focused on our own needs. And we still use Adams at the most of its possibilities, like the reporting system connectivity, or I can take the example of the ABP modules. Adams has a nice, and is developing some more nice ABP profiling data. So the hematological one, the urine one, the steroidal one now. And so we use those those tools. Our scientific assessor look at them. The only missing part for us was the capacity to grade a profile in Adams. So we focused on that particular very small development, and we made sure that we would use Adams for everything else.
So now if we look, this is a very schematic image, just a high level view on this idea of in the blue box, it's one organization with its system. So let's imagine we have this anti-doping specific tools. In our case is the PASS application. And what I want to highlight here is the need to collect, the need to have real-time data exchange internally with other systems that we have in place that are not specific to the anti-doping work, and externally with laboratories, with other ADOs, with the sample collection agencies, with WADA, with IOC, with other major events organizers, and so on. And here, what is from a more technical point of view, what is relevant is to notice also this trend. The industry is having a transition, and as any transition is not quick, it's slow, which means you'll find more ways to do in the same time. And we, for example, we do all of them. And the transition is from transferring files between organizations, just saving something in an Excel file, you push it to your partner, they open it, they interpret it, they do something with it. Then we have a next level where we have robots in place, and the robots are automating some actions. Instead of a person extracting data and taking an action, the robot will do some simple steps there. And then the third level, and we reached this with some partners, including WADA, and maybe this is the most relevant. The third level is to automatically connect the systems to talk to each other, and this is called in technical terms application programming interface, API. You'll hear about it as API. And we encourage you, wherever you are on your journey to build a system, make this a mandatory requirement, because nowadays having your system connected to other systems is as important as the actual features the system has, right? Have this in mind, and make sure you do this. And just to show examples of such interfacing on different methods, um, with the laboratories, we have an interface established with most of them, where as soon as the sample shipment is done, when the physical shipment is done, the information goes to the laboratory directly on a secure platform, and the laboratory receives a notification. They can already access their data, and they are ready for the shipment to be received. Another example, which is maybe the most important example for this year, is when we are done with a collection of a sample in our paperless system, and the testing officer validates the identity and some other elements that were provided by the doping control officers. On a click of a button, an API function, so this connectivity that I mentioned, is called in Adams, and Adams creates the DCF directly for us. So we don't need to enter the DCFs in Adams by hand anymore. And going back again, whatever you do for your future systems, keep high priority on connectivity with other systems. Raphael, back to you on this topic. Thoughts?
Well, yeah, I fully agree with what you said. Some of your words are actually pretty inspiring, I would even say. The connectivity with the lab, it's a kind of dream on our side. But of course, we do not have the same organization as ITA, but we still quickly came to the same conclusion. We have to connect with other partners and other systems, whether it's internal or external, actually. And well, yeah, as you mentioned, automated exchanges and collaboration are key when we come to integrated IT systems. If I take an example, the combination of paperless app plus API with our providers made a huge change for us. We avoid human mistakes in typing, and the data quality is much better now. Okay, so yeah, here I tried to summarize a bit our process. So to get to have a tool that helps you on a daily basis, and to achieve what you see on the right side of the slide, the process is important. Yes, we first started by trying to find a common denominator to all our data, which here for most organizations is quite obvious. It's going to be the athlete. Then we had to work on the data around that common denominator in the goal to give an updated synthesis to the user all the time. After that, we had to create an environment that all users could access with the right level of security and with different roles. And then we had to create live interactions and data flows between those roles. So you start a real collaboration between all stakeholders. And that's the part I was trying to explain in the previous slide about the challenges, is that when all this is solved, everybody's in the same tool and everybody has quality time to be spent on analyzing, planning, and monitoring. So maybe we can show some nice features that we can benefit from these tools. And I think, George, you want to elaborate on the use of location.
Yeah. So the point is to just go briefly through several examples. Of course, we're happy to elaborate more in the Q&A section at the end. And this was indeed an interesting example. We have data, and data sometimes covers geolocation of geographical location of events, of doping control officers, whereabouts of the athletes, and so on. And we realized we can optimize our work, and we have an automation decision process with the goal of saving costs, because we can use the existing data to identify nearby tests that can be grouped together, to have the ability to find the flexibility for a specific test in order to be performed by a doping control officer who's already in the field. And here with lots of configurability, like maximum distances and time frames and so on, our system is guiding us on who should perform an activity, a testing activity, a collection activity, in order for the overall cost to be lower. So Raphael, I know you also used this, and how did you do it?
Yeah, we have a bit the same approach, but also a bit different. So for us, cleaning and geolocating the whereabouts data allowed us to design reports. And then with those reports, we can group missions much better and save costs. We can also react when we see athletes gathering together, typically for competitions or training groups that we were not aware of. And actually, it's the most interesting ones. So here I tried to show some examples on the maps with the athletes. The more you scroll, the more details you get, and the more you can see where the athletes are gathering.
Go to a next example.
Yes, so my next topic is about TDP and risk assessment. So quite an important topic. This slide here shows how the tool helped us to solve the transition from management plans to test execution. The risk assessment allows you to focus your resources on the sport disciplines or athletes that deserves it the most, but you still need to manage a decent testing program on the low priority athletes. The problem is that they represent a high number of athletes, and the time you have to take care of them is quite limited in the end. So we wanted to find a functionality that would help us prepare a yearly TDP over several athletes. So you define the number of tests, you define the type of analysis of samples, the timing of the test, even if it's approximate, but you keep the possibility to update individually if needed. And then you can assign it to providers in a few clicks. So that's what this slide is showing, is that you build up a testing plan, you create a group of athletes, you assign this testing plan to a group of athletes, and then you just need to send to the providers. So some of you might recognize this slide from a previous webinar that has been held by Thomas. So the risk assessment, the dynamic risk assessment is something very important for us in our program. And here I wanted to illustrate how we find a solution to make it work and how we interact around it. So you see in how the risk factor has been built. You have collective risk factors and the individual risk factors. And the tool, in fact, at the bottom of the slide, show you an athlete, and at the bottom of the picture, you see the different scores. So the collective risk factors are being handled by an admin person, countries and sports are being graded, but then the individual risk factors are being updated all the time. And performance is moving all permanently with each performance of athletes. Intel can come anytime. ABP will be updated upon review of our science people. And so the tool is going to update automatically the risk category of the athlete. And then the tool is going to trigger some interactions. So you can go to the next slide. So each change of grade and comment from any user can trigger an update in the risk assessment of the athlete. So the score is moving, as I was saying, and then the tool is going to send notifications to the corresponding user directly in the tool, calling for an update of the individual athlete testing plan. So for example, if an athlete goes from priority medium to high, then the test coordinator will receive a notification saying your science person updated the score. As we can see in the middle of the slide here, you have the comment, you have the new value, and then you know that you have some new tests to be planned because we accommodate the number of tests depending on the risk category. So it's very important to create interactions between users. When somebody flags something, everybody needs to be automatically informed and can work accordingly. Here you have some visuals about Intel score update that triggers a different risk assessment. You have explanation from our science people, but the performance of an athlete could also trigger a change of priority, and then we would need to act on this accordingly as well.
Okay, move back to PASS and give some examples from PASS of features, maybe not necessarily the most complex features, but simple examples that show the value of data being in one place. And I mentioned earlier the challenge with dealing with different sources of data and the risk of data inconsistencies. And even when you have one system, you still have different sources. You have data coming from the doping control officers, you have data coming from the laboratories, you have some other sources. And for us, it was important at some point to identify mismatches and to react to them. And this means that we defined the rules, and we had a tool verify the data sets for us on a permanent basis, and they are being flagged to to the testing officer so they can take action if, for example, some wrong reporting from the laboratory will prevent us from properly connecting the data, or on the contrary, a sample collection agency did something wrong, or one of our testing officers recorded something wrong. Any such error, we try to find opportunities to identify before it becomes a problem. And here the tool identifies and proposes a solution, and then the user will usually in some clicks fix it. Sometimes it's more than just some clicks. They need to communicate with the other partners to just align. But flagging the issue before it becomes a problem with anti-doping program is essential. Then another need that we wanted to address is the communication between teams and between departments. And we came from a system where when something was happening in the testing process, emails were being sent to the legal team and to other partners in order to notify for unsuccessful attempts or some other things. And here what you see is one of the features where, in order to we wanted to reduce the need for emails and to save the times, and we have some buttons to just send notifications to relevant people, and then a testing officer can easily by a click initiate a quarter filing failure, which appears automatically in the to-do list for the colleagues from the legal team when they take over and they move forward and so on. So this is an example of interdepartmental data exchange and collaboration on the process without use of emails, phone calls, or something else. The information just pops up in their to-do list because it was submitted by the other colleagues. In the same idea, but a bit extending, we have through Adams the information coming from the APMUs. We receive various types of notifications, and we receive recommendations that then are processed by our ABP experts. And again, with few clicks in the application, they create a test request to our testing officers, and this pops up for them. They just fill in what they need to do specifically, and they decide when and how they do it. They can also initiate a reanalysis request to be sent to laboratories. So all the actions are planned ahead. We know what are the types of actions, and we give them a quick way to just do it with several clicks. And one more example where it's again about quickly moving forward between experts when we have a case of whereabouts failure coming from the test outcomes. This is automated in the systems, so we do not forget, drop them, or anything else. So these are some examples. Happy to answer later some questions about this. Now, Raphael, back to you, because I know you have this nice calendar view on the data, and I think it's a good moment to talk about that.
Yes. Yeah. So here, maybe you don't see very well, but we'll wait the next slide. So the calendar it's the main piece of the puzzle for us. It's like the roundabout of the data. It's the place where data visualization is the most relevant and where our test coordinators can achieve intelligent test planning. So if you move to the next slide, we get a better view. So here it's a zoom on one given period of time, so we can better see, maybe not exactly what is written, but I mean, I can explain. So the data can be organized over years, months, or weeks, depending on the need of the user. The information flows from the whereabouts, from the competition database, from sample collection reports, including ABP values or urine values. So you can choose, you don't have this full view on the tool, but on the top of the calendar, you could choose to visualize the urine testosterone or T ratio, in the yellow box, or you can choose to visualize the ABP values and hemoglobin and reticulocyte, the most important ones. So you can see here, for example, on the 17th of February, we can read 14.6/1.49. So I know on the 17th of February, I had an ABP sample for this athlete, and the hemoglobin was 14 and the reds were 1. So when you click on one given day, you get enhanced information in each pop-up. The pop-up opens up, so you see that I've clicked on the 18th of February here, and I see that I have a regular activity in United Arab Emirates with a 1 hour slot at 8 p.m. That has been modified on the 13th of February, and then I've got the competition information because the athlete competed there. So we have a score of score is ponderated by World Athletics, but it gives us an idea of the performance of the athletes during that day. You have the time and the position as well. So this information is seen on the 18th on the main calendar, and then on the pop-up you have more info. This also, if you see, you get the test information on the second pop-up. So you see that the test has been completed. You see that the urine gravity was 1.005 in the pop-up. You have the notification date and time, the test duration, the TA, the provider, the name of the TCO. I trigger the suspicious flag next to test completed because the athlete declares one supplement that I never heard of before. And when I see the sequence, if you look at the whole sequence, I think that's why the calendar is interesting, is that I see an athlete in altitude with hemoglobin at 15, in March, in April, and then just before the competition, while athlete is still at altitude, the hemoglobin goes down at 13.9, and then it stays down even if when she comes back or he comes back in altitude. So this data, you see that she had a competition on the 23rd of April. This visualization of data is very important. So it allows us to plan and update tests very easily, to react on test window adjustment. For example, if the athlete has moved from one place to another, I can change provider, I can extend the window, reduce it. It allows us to identify and flag trends or patterns on whereabouts, competitions, or ABP values over the years, to observe redundancies and gaps in previous testing plans. It also allows us to display the testing performed by other ADOs. You see that here, the sample collected on the 17th of February is actually in blue, while the one on the 28th of March is in green. So we know a different testing authority was testing the athlete. It would also allow us to answer APMU request in a few clicks, which is very useful, and to request additional analysis after we see all those data. You can move to the next one.
Okay, so we move away from these examples, and we want to give some high-level recommendations on security and data privacy. I think the first message here is you need to do this somehow by design in the systems. We encourage you to consider security and data privacy from the beginning. Don't try to add it later as a nice improvement of the application, because everything will be more difficult. So having this in mind from the beginning will make things much smoother. Then what we did is to align very well with the compliance specialists and to make sure that we follow all the rules that come from the IT world, the security rules like using firewalls, VPNs, the second factor authentication, all these kind of tools. Then looking more into the compliance and privacy matters. Applying the principle of least privilege, which means somebody should not have access to any piece of information they don't need. So don't give access in excess, because in case of a security problem, then you expose more data than you should. And then this is also something that once established at the beginning of building a system, it's very natural to have all the people follow it later. And then on a more a less technical, more formal part. Each organization should make sure they apply the ISPPPI and any applicable law in the country. So again, it's challenging at the beginning or even during to stay up to date to all the requirements, but it's important to make sure we are compliant. And then we all need to ensure that there is valid legal basis, like required consent or others, in place when we work with personal data of the athletes or other persons. So this is sometimes not very easy and straightforward, but again, it's practice makes it perfect. So if you get to do this all the time, to pay attention to the laws and the regulations regarding privacy and security, it becomes natural. Good. We arrived to the recommendation slide. So this will be the takeaways. If we came with anything useful, we hope it's somehow also briefly presented here. Uh, we we all need IT systems. This is the reality of today to cover our needs, and we recommend that you use tools that are consistent across processes, connected with other systems, and connected to partners. Now, this journey to build or to implement such tools looks like a big challenge, and it is a big challenge, right? But one other key message from us is that none of us are alone in this. So uh, if some of you are at the beginning of this journey, be aware that there are organizations that can help. WADA is here to help. We have here the contact of the Adams Testing Working Group on the screen, where you can contact for any questions on these matters. Organizations like the International Testing Agency and the Athletics Integrity Unit, represented here in this meeting, we are open. We are open to collaborate, to share our knowledge, to share our tools if you are interested. But first of all, to connect with your systems, to learn from each other, and to somehow avoid going through the same difficulties if the other organizations already experience that. So please feel free to reach out, and I think unless Raphael, you want to add something, then we open the Q&A session.
No, I agree with your last message. It's all good.
Thank you. Chaya,
Thank
back to
you.
you.
Thank you, George and Raphael. We hope that today the discussion has provided insights as to how to build an ecosystem around atoms and maybe generate some discussions amongst organizations. I've received a few questions and I see two in the chat, but before we go to the ones in the chat message, um, as an organization that does not have an actual IT department or that doesn't have the same capacity as your two organizations do, where do we start?
Should I take it? Raphael, do you want to take it or should I go first?
You can start. I don't mind, but then I
Uh,
can.
so my first recommendation would be to look at the Adams toolset. And we know there are already some nodos working even with the paperless system, which was maybe the latest addition to the toolset. Um, and the first step is there is a platform that is available for free. It's covering, as we've seen earlier in those green boxes, is covering all areas of anti-doping, and that is the start. Then you as an organization might realize on this specific area, I need something more because this is solving the general cases, but I have particularities that are not covered here. And this is when you start looking around. And uh, we said we know what we have in ITA and Raphael in AIU as tools, and we are happy to discuss and to see if our tools can be used. There are also other organizations out there with applications. So I think that will be the second step, to look what other applications are already in the market, and then you have to take a decision, build or buy. Should I build some extensions to what I use from Adams, or should I buy a system that, a license for a system that is gonna help me do that? This is our recommendation. You have our contacts. We are available if you need to discuss about it, and happy to be very open with anything on that.
And if I may just add, I mean, the tools that were shown today were all developed in-house, or they were specially tailor-made to the two organizations. But an ecosystem could very well be built with with an Excel file as well, right, where you extract the data and work within Excel. So it all depends on the needs of the organization. And I guess George and Raphael, would you agree that the first starting point is to review the needs of the organization? And at what point do you need to go beyond and above what is available in Adams to develop your own system? Or could you maybe find some middle ground that wouldn't be too costly and still respect everything related to the data privacy and to the security?
Yeah, I think Chaya, a good point. You mentioned that we all started on Excel sheets, and I think many of us are still using this. And there are some things that you can very well cover, as George was mentioning, using Adams and your Excel sheets. But when you have different needs, and that's the approach we took ourselves, is to, the slide that George is displaying now is when there are things that we cannot perform with Booz, then that's where we think the need for an IT solution is to be put forward. And here I try to design this decision of going to a tailor-made IT solution. So what should be done in this kind of case? But you are perfectly right to say that depending on the size, depending on your needs, you might not need to take that decision, and you could do something in Excel or in another software that already exists.
Yeah, I agree with this. I just phrase it differently, because for me, when you decide what system you need, Excel can be one of the answers. Excel is a system per se, right? So I'm not excluding Excel. I'm just saying you need to see what else you need. And building an Excel should be a decision, should not be the default decision. This is my advice.
Yes.
Don't stay with Excel because you didn't find any solution. Go to Excel because this is your solution, right? And when you have your answers, and Excel will not, you have your questions, and the answers from Excel will not be great on some topics like data sharing, security, and so on, right? That's why taking the decision I want to go on Excel comes with a cost. The cost of lowering some security and interconnectivity options, but it might be the best option for a while, and then you can adapt later. But of course, Excel is a tool that is powerful and can help you at this for a while.
Yeah. And just referring back to the Adams testing working group, the role that is to guide for everything related to the testing activities within the system. Would you two be available to support anyone that would like to contact? We ask that everybody that wants or is looking for information can write directly to the Adams testing working group with the email address on the slide that is shown right now. Yes, that's the one. Otherwise, just send an email to George and Raphael if you do have the contact information. There is one more question here about the DCF API. I'll just say that the DCF API is currently in pilot. So we have a list of organizations that are interested. ITA was the first one to go in production, using it currently in a major event. So that's a big win. We have Lorenzo asking how the whereabouts altitude was retrieved. This one, I don't know if you want to reply now or just get back to.
We have some time. So on our side, the whereabouts are geolocated. So we use GPS, and with the GPS, we retrieve the altitude. How, George, how do you do on the side? It's actually interesting.
Yeah, so right here we have two types of whereabouts. We have the normal whereabouts coming from Adams, and they are extracted and processed as needed, depending on the test plans. And then we have the situations when we are responsible for major events, and we have what is called rooming information. And this is where the delegations are reporting more precise information, because usually during a major event, the athlete is not coming to the specific room in the Adams whereabouts. And then starting from the information that is available there, we use some online tools that are giving us the altitude. So it's a Google engine actually that is giving us the altitude based on the location.
Yeah. So
So you do not use the altitude that is provided in, let's say, the blood passport questionnaire?
That is
That
used
is
as
one
well,
of the question.
but
Okay.
that is just in some situations when you have it. Of
Okay.
course, that is
Yeah.
used. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Of course.
There's one question about an automatic download of whereabouts information. So currently the extraction is done via reports. There is no APIs. We are looking into possible solutions, but I cannot give a time frame on those two. So
be
the
sure that with George, we put the priority on this to Chaya.
Yeah, so
no comment on it.
I think the message for the participants is that sending an email to Shaya once in a while is good to tell them
To Adam support.
joke aside. I think messages from you, and we know messages from INADO are coming consistently, and messages with what is the priority for each organization. We do the same. We provide to WADA our thoughts, and this is important. We know WADA has a huge list of work in progress, so they never promise to deliver too much, but at least they are aware of the priorities, and they can decide. And now we have these steps with the DCF API, which is great. Can tell you now we are running the European Games and uploading 1,000 DCFs through the API. It's very convenient, and saving efforts, making sure the data quality is high. I encourage you all, as soon as the pilot is over and Chaya can open the door, encourage you to use it. Our experience was good. Other questions, Chaya?
There is one more about the Adams training environment. There is an Adams training environment. So if you could maybe contact the Adams support to request an account. TCAT May. And hi to Bhutan as well. Okay, any words of wisdom to end the session, unless somebody else has?
No more questions?
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, George and Raphael. It was a lot of information and good information. So we will be sharing the video of the session with you in a few days, I would say. Don't hesitate to reach out to the Adams Testing Working Group as well at the email address atwg@wada-ama.org with George that just sent a message, George Samis, as the co-chair. And we will get back to you as soon as possible and even get you in touch with some of the members if needed.
Shaya, sorry, if you still have some minutes, there is a new question.
Yes.
What advice would you give a country transitioning from its NOC functioning as its NADO to establish a NADO as far as Adams?
Okay. This one I will be transferred to our NADO-RADO department. They will get back to the person. All right. Well, thank you. Have a good day, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Chaya. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.
Bye.